Hi, this is Jody Limner. I am the Capstone Coordinator at JCC. Thank you for helping out with our Capstone students this semester. This presentation is really for anybody who's new to being a faculty member for Capstone, or really just to update on any changes to Capstone since maybe the last time you were managing Capstone students. So really the objective, this is clinical experience. Students will work with a nurse preceptor on the unit where they are assigned to demonstrate the knowledge and skills related to the 6 learning outcomes to the right. Now these learning outcomes are not only the course learning outcomes for Nursing 222, but they are the nursing program end of program learning outcomes. So we want students to be able to demonstrate professional behaviors, patient-centered care, safe practice environment, collaboration, healthcare informatics, and management of care. It's kind of challenging because we are not physically there to watch the students on the unit, so we do rely very heavily on the preceptors. So the preceptors are really the ones that are going to be filling out the midpoint and final clinical evaluations, but the faculty members, you, are signing off on that. You are the one that's going to determine whether or not the student has successfully passed their capstone experience. So, you know, there is a remediation plan that we have. So if you're hearing from the preceptor that the students are really having, you know, they're really struggling in clinical, you know, maybe there's behavioral issues, so that would fall under professional behaviors. You know, maybe there's professional behaviors like the student isn't showing up on time to work, is talking on their cell phone throughout the shift, is disrespectful, stuff like that. That is something we need to address at midpoint and have a plan for the student to really show improvement so that they can successfully complete their capstone experience. Patient-centered care, safe practice environment, again, they need to be practicing safely, and the preceptor would be watching and evaluating the student to make sure that they're doing that. And then how we kind of evaluate them is through the reflection. So the students are going to write reflection posts after each of their shifts, and they should be addressing one of these student learning outcomes in each of their reflection posts so that we can see, yes, what did you do during the shift to demonstrate that you are meeting this learning outcome. And basically, you know, what we are hoping is that they're ready to transition to the role of a registered nurse. So I do let students know we don't expect them to be experts. We do not expect them at the end of 120 hours to be able to work on that unit, you know, independently. So we are just looking that they are ready to transition into that role of a new registered nurse. So for this semester, they can begin their hours on 4/8, and they have to finish all of their hours by 5/12. That does give them some room for flexibility depending on when and how much their preceptor works. You know, and I do give students some strategies that, you know, we do have some preceptors that go out on disability, or they go out sick, or they have vacation time. And so we can kind of have the student work with their preceptor and the unit manager and the educator within the facility to find a substitute in the event that that happens. But they do have enough time within that period for 8 to 5/12 that if they need to take a day, you know, for an appointment, or if they're sick or something, they should still be able to get their 120 hours. Again, they will follow their preceptor's schedule. That 120 hours, that accumulates very quickly because they document the time they get to the hospital and onto the unit until the time that they leave the unit, okay? And all of that time counts. So if they are on that unit for 13 hours, then that shift is counted as 13 hours. Okay, we don't have them sign out for lunch. You know, we expect that when they're showing up to that unit, they are demonstrating those professional behaviors, they're in their uniform, maybe they're getting some information from their preceptor, so they are allowed to count all of the time that they are on the unit. They can do a maximum of 44 hours per week, and the week is Sunday to Saturday. So we can have students, you know, if they have a preceptor who is working, say 4/12s, and those 4/12s fall Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, well, they can get in more than that 44 hours in that amount of time, but they just can't do more than 3 12-hours shifts in that time. So they could do, you know, 5 shifts in a row but some of those would be 8s and 12s. And as long as that 44 hours falls within the Sunday to Saturday. So you will have some kind of workarounds with those. Let's see, their lunch breaks are included in their hours, and they do have a calendar to document their time. So the students know, and I give them a folder that I tell them to keep all of their capstone documents in. So they have their initial agreement form that they will sign, their preceptor will sign, and then you will sign off on that as well. They have that form that needs to be turned in at the end. They also have their clinical evaluation tool that they'll have to turn in at the end, and they have their calendar. Their calendar is their proof of time. So they will document when they were on the unit, and then their preceptor will initial it and sign that, yes, they were here for those hours. So that is essentially their time card. So at the end, they will need to turn in those 3 documents, the capstone agreement form, the clinical evaluation tool, and the calendar to me. Those items prove to me that, 1, they were approved to be on that unit, that yes, they completed all of their hours, and that clinical evaluation tool shows that they did meet all of their outcomes successfully for their capstone experience. So I tell students to keep all of their forms in their folder, and when you guys go to see the student and the preceptor, you can sign things, but try to allow students to keep those papers, because it's been challenging at the end to try and get all of those papers in by the end of the course. And since these guys are graduating, we have to be able to say that, yes, they successfully completed everything and that we have everything in our possession to show that, so that they can graduate and then take their NCLEX exam. So that's why I really, tell students, you own your paperwork. That has to be turned in at the end, so that we know that you successfully completed your capstone. Again, that calendar is their proof of time. It's their timekeeping, since they don't punch a clock. Basically, again, they will note when they're working, and then the preceptor will sign it. I also tell them, the students, that it's really nice if they kind of, plot out when they're going to be working with their preceptor on the calendar. And that way they can send it to you as a GCC faculty member, so you will know when they were working. That way, if you're seeing multiple students at, the same facility, you can kind of figure out times when you can hit multiple students at once. So you're not making so many trips out to the facility. So, the students can either scan it and email you a copy of their calendar towards the beginning of capstone, or they can take a picture and text it, however you and the students decide you want to best communicate. So the meetings, at the beginning of capstone, the students will meet with their preceptors to get their schedule and to give the preceptors the preceptor handbook, so the preceptors understand what their responsibility is for capstone, that they will be evaluating the student and filling out the clinical evaluation form and signing off on their hours. So, they will meet with them. I tell students, because capstone faculty doesn't officially start until 4/8, and some students will meet with their preceptors before they start their preceptor or their capstone hours. So, I tell them you can't expect your GCC faculty to just pop in, or they might be meeting, with their preceptors that are really off time on the weekend or evenings. And I know people are busy. So I just tell them, if you meet with your preceptor and your GCC faculty person isn't there, can't be there by phone, can't be there in person, that they can review that preceptor handbook with their preceptor. They can have the preceptor fill out the agreement form, but we have to have proof that that was signed and that the student is okay to start their hours. Because basically that agreement form is that preceptor agreeing to, yes, I'm going to take this student, I've agreed to everything, and we can start these preceptor, hours or capstone hours. So we do need proof of that. So I tell students that they can take a picture of that agreement form and text it to you, or scan it and send it via email, so that you have the preceptor's information on that form, and that that they met and that everybody's in agreement that the capstone hours can start. And then students will actually turn in the form at the end. midpoint evaluation, and final evaluation. So the clinical evaluation tool, if you've worked with students in clinical at GCC at any semester, any point, the clinical evaluation tool is essentially the same. So, students will write their comments at midpoint, the preceptor will write their comments at midpoint, and then basically you, as that educator, will sign off on that to say, yes, you've touched base with the student and you've touched base with the preceptor, things are going well at midpoint, and you sign off on that. If there is an issue at midpoint, or maybe even before midpoint, the preceptor reaches out to you to say, hey, there's an issue. There is a remediation plan that is in the student's capstone folder that can be filled out. So you can write out a plan, so if it's an issue where the student isn't showing up to their capstone on time, or maybe they're on their phone or something like that, you address those issues and the expectations going forward so that the student can successfully complete capstone. Okay, we have had an instance in the past where a student has failed, and I've had many instances where we've had to fill out remediation plans for various things. I do let students know in the orientation that we do expect them to be on time, to be in their uniform. If they carry their phone on the unit, maybe they have kids or stuff that they need to talk to, okay, but they cannot be pulling their phone out and talking on the phone or on the computer, stuff like that. So if there are issues, they need to be addressed. Maybe the student academically just doesn't understand things and isn't where the preceptor feels that they need to be. And again, as the educators, we have to assess and make sure that the preceptor has appropriate expectations for the student. And we would be kind of discussing and figuring out, is the student where they need to be. Going into capstone, students must have passed 212 clinical. And that's their 4th semester clinical as well. So it's not like we're sending students out, that couldn't pass 212 clinical. Because if they don't pass 212 clinical, they don't go to capstone. So this is that capstone agreement form that I was talking about. So as you can see up here, this is you, the supervising clinical faculty. So this is your information. So, you or the student can fill out this top part, and then you can sign it when you get the actual form in hand. But the student can put in their information and sign, and the preceptor can put in their information and sign. And that way, you will have the preceptor's contact information. There is additional information, this level of education and years of experience. We actually use this for state. We have to prove to the state that, our preceptors are meeting minimum requirements. So that is why we ask these questions down here. So again, at the end, you'll want to sign off on this. But if you can't be at that initial meeting with the preceptor and the student can either scan this or take a picture of it and send it to you so that you have the preceptor's information and that the student is okay to start their capstone hours. Clinical evaluation tool, again, very similar to the ones that we use in other semesters. At the end, basically what you're going to want to do is check that, yes, they clinically passed, that they met these requirements, and then you will sign off on the midpoint and the final evaluations because you will have checked in with the preceptor and student at midpoint and at final. So you're going to sign off on those. So students, so that we know what students are doing and that they're really meeting these course learning outcomes, we need other information from the student. So this is where they write the reflections, and they're going to write them in a discussion board. And I will show you at the end of this presentation. I can open up my computer and show you where the discussion board is in Brightspace. But you will access your discussion board. You will have your own. It's under your name. Okay, so the students will just respond to your discussion board. And it's kind of nice in the discussion board because you can filter it by unread responses. So it's a little bit easier to navigate than the older system that we have. But basically, students are going to address one of these student learning outcomes in each reflection post. they should also have a midpoint reflection and a final reflection. So if they have, they're working 12-hour shifts, they're going to have 10 reflection posts. If you have somebody working 8-hour shifts, you can work with that student and maybe have them do 3 reflections a week, because it is a lot more if they're doing 8-hour shifts to have to do that many reflections. So, you have that authority to make that decision. If you have somebody working 5 days a week, you can say, you know what, give me 3 meaningful reflections to reflect on, the shifts. But they need to address one of these in each of their posts or reflections. And then there are 2 graded assignments. There's a delegation paper and a case study. There are hard copy rubrics I can give you, and then I will put in Brightspace as well. And there's also the rubric that is attached right to the assignment, where they turn it in the course. There's also the Turnitin that you can review to check for plagiarism, if they're not paraphrasing their sources, or I've had instances where a student's work looked very similar to another student's work. So, you need to review that stuff. Case study, they will have that as well. Again, the rubric is there for you, both hard copy and attached in Brightspace. The evaluations we kind of talked about already. The preceptor, again, will be the one writing the comments. We'll be filling out the clinical evaluation tool, but you will be signing off on that because it is GCC Capstone faculty that determine that the patient or that the student is where they need to be at both midpoint and final. The student should be reporting to you any concerns. So maybe they have a concern about their preceptor, or they were out sick and have to make up hours elsewhere. They should be reporting those issues to you. I tell students if there is something that occurs in Capstone, like a needle stick, that they will follow through with the hospital's protocol. Okay, so the hospital is going to take care of them. I actually had a student once who passed out at Capstone, and they called a rapid response on her. So the hospital is going to take care of that emergent issue, but they still need to report that to us, and we need to fill out an incident report because they are a student, and so we have to take care of them as a student. So we would still fill out the incident report and just make sure that we know what the follow-up was, and that type of thing. So they should be reporting that to you. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I will put my phone number in Brightspace. I've emailed it to everybody as well. Please do not hesitate to reach out via text, email, call, whatever you prefer is fine with me. But please reach out with questions. Again, I'm going to show you really quick. I'm going to open this up to let's see if I can do this. Nope, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. Okay, so this is the 222 course. Let me open this up so you guys can see this. Maybe I can, hold on. Anyway, it's not going to let me open it to the whole screen, but if you open up the 222 course, you will see activities up here. You can find the discussion board one of 2 ways. 1, you can go to activities, or 2, you can scroll down to clinical and lab, and I'll have the discussion boards in here. But if you go up to activities and you hit discussions, it'll open up all of the discussion boards for the course. And so you can see there's my Capstone discussion board, and it has all of the information for the students on what they need to post. And then this is the actual board. So when there are posts in here, I'll be able to click on those. And so everybody who is working has their own discussion board where their Capstone students will be posting. That way you're not looking at 50 some students and trying to scroll through 50 students. You will just have your students for Capstone. So that is that. And again, you can also access this by going on the main, if you're on the main page, which would be content. I can find it by going to the Capstone, Clinical Capstone tab. And in the clinical capstone tab, the discussion boards are also here. I hope that makes sense. I'm sorry I couldn't open this up to my full screen. I don't know why it's giving me a problem, but that's that. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Otherwise, I'm hoping for a great capstone experience for all of our students, and they are almost done, which is really exciting. And again, thank you.